Thank you for joining us wherever you are. This podcast episode is brought to you by the Old Ways Actual Play team. This actual play uses the Trinity Continuum rules by Onyx Path Publishing. This actual play is performed by adults and in an adult setting. While we try hard to stick to language for all ages, listeners should know that this podcast may include mature themes and various hijinks. All content, including names, places, events, companies, and etc., which may bear resemblance to entities living or dead, is strictly coincidental. And now, on with the show. Good evening, and thank you for joining us in another episode of the Old Ways podcast. I am normally your Keeper Michael, but I'm going to be turning the table and the lead chair over to James to lead us through another episode of our Trinity series, Trinity Continuum series, Age of Wonders. Hopefully you've all enjoyed the first episode. We had a mighty good time last week recording it, and we'll just hand it over to you.
Well, thank you, Mike. This is James. You may remember me from such movies as all of the other episodes of the podcast you've heard and the last episode of this arc. Tonight, I'm going to bring you episode 2 of Age of Wonders, and I'm excited to jump right into that. But first, and at the beginning of the episode, as we always like to do without fail, let's get to some introductions. To my right.
This is Jake. I'll be playing Fillmore J. Pinehurst, Captain Omega.
Captain Omega, indeed. Always the last to know. And to Jake's right.
Hi, this is Miranda, and I play Florence Fletcher, wealthy business mogul, loyal to Rockwell investments, just looking to make a buck here.
Make a buck you seem to be extremely good at. Let's see if those skills can be applied to other more useful areas in life, like survival and continuing with that heartbeat thing. And to Miranda's right.
This is Morgan. I play Ellie Thompson. I am a Wisconsin farm girl that has been thrust into to being an American spy and everything else.
That's okay. You don't have to blow cover for us. We don't mind. You just the fact that you used the word thrust and I used the word blow should be enough for the intro. And last at the table, but not least at the table.
Correct. Hi, it's me again. Your favorite something, Mike, and I'll be playing Nikolas Marcos, and I am the sneak, or one of the sneaks here. Not the anymore, as was discovered last game. Spoiler. And he's rather curious about the device that he's handed the professor and what power or potential terror it might entail.
Does it hold wonders or does it hold terrors? Well, let's zoom the camera in a little bit and find out. So it's only been a moment or two have passed while you guys are getting your bearings here in the Hall of Industry. And the professor seems to be not lost in thought, but perhaps lost in calculation. He seems to be rapidly doing calculations with a slide rule and piece of paper that he even had Nikolas turn around at one point so he could put the paper on Nikolas's back to do some pretty advanced calculations. Thankfully, there's not a lot of decimal, but it doesn't seem like there's a lot of decimal points in this. Otherwise, you're fairly certain that you would be dead like so many Caesars on the floor. But here you are, standing with the professor writing on your back. Ladies, you have had a moment or two to not necessarily talk, but you have an opportunity to talk and exchange quote-unquote pleasantries, if you so choose, not that you have to, amongst the hubbub and color of the World's Fair currently. The heat does not reach the inside of the hall, from the April sun beating down. It is, in fact, actually nice and cool in here, kept cool by a rather robust air conditioning system that runs the roof and ceiling area. Off in the distance, you begin to hear bells. It sounds like religious hymns being played on a bell-like device. It's not overpowering. It doesn't make it impossible to talk or anything. They're actually quite pleasant. And it doesn't seem to be one religion. As you stand here and listen, it seems to be multiple religions playing multiple types of religious music, holy music, what's considered to be, sacred music to these various religions. And even amongst this piece and the sense of foreboding that perhaps you have now found because of the map that you found just recently, dropped by the mysterious man in the trench coat. There's a spark of hope that comes along with these tubular bells playing.
Well, Professor?
Well, it's good news. Well, kind of. Well, not good news. A little bit of both. So I redid my calculations, and it looks like there's more than one device. It'd have to be more than one device in order to create a blast radius this big.
Mm-hmm. In fact, your calculations, Professor, you reason that it would have to be probably 4 or 5 devices, all perhaps owing up to or offloading their power to some sort of accumulator or amplifier.
Well, we're going to have to look for something that has these devices and would act as an amplifier.
As you're talking and walking towards this 200-foot tall spire and 173-foot tall metal sphere.
It was like, I look up at the spire thinking, that looks like a radio antenna.
The Trilon towers above you as you walk. It's truly, easily the equivalent in majesty of the Eiffel Tower or any of the other edifices that are built for the other world's fairs. This is easily their peer. And the sphere, actually, as you walk close to it, it is labeled Democracy on the map. You see that there's actually a curved ramp that goes up one side of it and into the side of the sphere itself. And then that same curved ramp comes out of the other side and back down. And there are people idly walking up to the Trilon and patting it and poking at it and then walking to this curved pathway and up into the perisphere. And they're in there for a while and then back out.
Excuse me. I look at Ellie. Can I see that map?
I suppose. I hand it over to him.
I unfold it again. Take a look at the, X's and the markings that have been done on it.
Mm-hmm.
If I imagined this map as a circuit board,
mm-hmm.
and it was trying to generate a specific type of channel flow of energy, if that massive spire is the projection point, does Democracy look like some sort of, I don't know, like a gathering place for that energy before it's channeled out?
Make me intelligence technology roll.
Happily so.
Yes. You may also, Professor, make as you were doing the calculations, Florence, as you guys are approaching Democracy and the gentlemen are sciencing it up, Florence and Ellie,
Mm-hmm.
this seems to be one of the main attractions of the fair, so to speak. And that the sphere itself is that ring around it you see on the map is actually filled with water. And the way it's built and with the reflection of the water, it actually looks like the sphere is floating over the pool. It's an optical illusion that's been created through very ingenious architecture.
So I have 2 successes.
2 successes from Nikolas.
I have 0.
0. The professor is actually rather taken aback just by the fact this engineering marvel of the perisphere and the Trilon. To put them together, you forget what you're doing in favor of figuring out the math of just the sheer volume of steel that they had to, because these are both made of fairly thick steel, welded together and polished, and then painted bright white. You find yourself standing at the entrance ramp to Democracy, looking at the map. Nikolas, with your 2 successes, yes, this sphere and Trilon would very much be an accumulator. But you do know that if that is the way this is set up, then there is probably not an explosive device here. There's probably an energy creation device. There's probably just a large energy channeling device. Or possibly even a very small one, and it's just using the frame of the sphere.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it doesn't necessarily mean that we can just shut whatever's down here, because whatever's going to go on outside in the park is going to keep happening.
Mm-hmm.
Or it's going to happen. It may not have any ways to go, but it doesn't mean that it's not going to affect people who are at the park now. So I suppose we just want to get a quick eyeball in here to know what we have to come back to. So yeah, I think once we're done with this, we need to, I gesture to the map. It looks like they've got something near one of the art buildings here. And I was just there earlier.
In fact, you were there for a couple of hours.
Yeah.
All you really saw was security guards and maintenance men.
Yeah, well, there were security guards inside the Hall of Industry either, but they weren't super helpful.
Not so
That
much.
one guy left the one guy drooling.
Well, let's get going.
Yep.
You guys head inside of the Democracy Perisphere. You climb up this curved ramp, and the majesty of the sphere in the sunlight with its being painted white you're walking inside of a large glowing sphere. But when you get close to it, its size and the amount of light it's reflecting really makes it dazzle. You head inside, and as you're looking at the architecture and the engineering of it, Professor, you notice that there are cables on the ground running up to the edge and running into the sphere to power it that are the size, easily each one is the size of a man's leg. These are very large cables running in it to run power to this.
Are they more than one coming from different angles?
Yes, it seems like there's multiple cables coming in, big and small, but most of them are fairly large cables. Could just be power infrastructure to run power to Democracy. And as you walk inside, you would see that it would need a large amount of power. The first thing that happens is it becomes very dark because your eyes go from the bright April sunlight and the reflected white to the inside that is relatively, in comparison, poorly lit. Once your eyes adjust, there's a moment of dizziness as you find yourself standing on a walkway that goes around the inside of the metal sphere. And you look down and there is, indeed, as they said, a Democracy. There's an entire city laid out below in miniature that fills the floor of Democracy, and it's about 20 feet down from the edge of the railing when you go up to the edge of it. By this point, many of you have been in airplanes or have seen aerial photography as a relatively new but increasingly interesting field. This has that same feel, but in real time, as the lights down there are blinking and some of the little cars are moving, and it gives you a very real feeling that you are hovering above almost the ideal city. You now see why there are so many cables running in here. The air temperature in here is it's like 78 degrees. It's almost chilly in comparison to being outside. They keep it very cool in here. The lights below and the lights underneath the walkways and above the walkways, so that you don't fall headfirst into Democracy itself, would take quite a bit of power. And hanging from the ceiling, the lighting fixtures up there are numerous, hanging from a spider web of metal rafters.
Well, look up. If I was going to hide something, I'd probably hide it up there above the lights.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be impossible to see from down here.
Absolutely. You want to go check it out?
Sure.
Ellie and Florence, the gentlemen give this exchange as people are walking by, oohing and ahhing. Some of them, as they walk by, are literally saying, ooh, ah, because back in the late 30s, that was still socially acceptable. Gentlemen, you were thinking about going up and inspecting the rigging?
I think the idea is that I'm going to go up there. I don't know, are you coming with, Professor?
Well, I can get us both up there. Anybody else want to go up?
Pulling out the device that you have on your
Yes.
hip. Okay. And he pulls out the device that looks a bit like a hairdryer with a cord coming out of it, and has a small series of dials and such on the top and sides.
I will turn it to channel 3.
Okay. And you have the group stand in a clump?
Yes.
Okay. You do know that there are going to be quite a few people that see this.
Yeah, I don't care.
Okay. So are you having them hold on to each other, or?
Yes.
Wait, is this like that time that
No, this is
those
completely
four
different.
assistants
Are you
got
sure?
melded together?
Yes. No. That's setting 9.
Ellie, from your position, you can see that there are a series of indicator lights that on the side of the handheld device, or the device that he has, that have now all fully lit. And you do get like selfie position where you're also in the, okay. And he steps into the group of all of you and kind of hugs you together a little bit, and then points this gun-shaped device at all of you and kind of reverses it in his hand so it's pointed at, and then pulls the trigger. And there is a sickening drop away, like being in a freight elevator that goes far too fast as your stomach drops out, or like being in a fast car that goes over a sharp hill. That loss of gravity. And indeed, that is exactly what it is, as that start motion that you make when you feel it pushes you off of the ground, and then you don't have the immediate sensation of going back to the ground, which is what your brain is waiting for. You, in fact, keep going up. You begin to float into the air like a feather cast about on a New York City street breeze. And the three of you that weren't expecting it need to make me a quick resolve roll.
Resolve. That is a 10.
Is it just a straight resolve, not plus anything?
Yeah, this is just straight resolve. This is more of a instinctive reactionary thing. There's no real skill that.
Okay.
Can you keep your cool?
Yes, this is
can't.
So you do not keep your composure?
There's no successes for Florence.
Okay, no successes.
1.
Okay, Nikolas has 1. Professor?
I don't.
Oh, you don't have to roll. You know what's happening. Ellie?
1.
1 success. Okay. You managed to keep your shit together. Nikolas, you also about the same level managed to keep your shit together. Florence, for just a moment, the facade cracks and you inadvertently clutch on to Nikolas and he puts his arm around you and that it's okay, I've got you. And you immediately wonder, okay, but who's got you? As you drift over the railing and above this tiny city below, which now, because it's below you and small, makes you feel like you're about 1.5 miles in the air, adding to the dizziness and the dizzying sensation of now floating on the breeze. A large group of people in the perisphere have stopped, just completely stopped what they're doing and are now staring at you, mouths agape, as the air currents and the brief motions of the professor waving his feet and hands as he has learned to do in 0G, you slowly drift towards the ceiling.
And as we're going up, I shout, "Ha-ha, science!"
Echoes around the inside of the perisphere.
And Florence, shortly after that, manages to get a gulp of air and shout out, "Brought to you by Rockwell Investments."
You hear a couple of people, "Oh, Rock Investments, oh my God, wow, that's amazing, that's got to be a trick." And so it takes just a second or two for you to waft to the top of the sphere, but comparatively, the sensation is that it takes 6 hours for you to float through the air to get to the top, as there's nothing underneath you but falling. You realize that the only thing holding you aloft in the air right now is the science of a man whose middle name you do not know other than the fact that it starts with the letter J. You reach the top of the sphere amongst the lighting fixtures. In behind the lighting fixtures, as you had surmised, is a device about the size of a bale of hay. It's made of a different type of metal than is the rest of the definitely welded and riveted together in a different way. It does not have the same constructionary thumbprint as the things around it. And it is wired into quite a few of the electrical cables that are up here. Not all of them, but quite a few.
I think this is it, Professor.
It does look like it.
Let me take a wary step forward just to make sure that I'm not going to float somewhere else.
No, you take a step and you kind of oscillate a little in the air, and there's a sickening spinning as you inadvertently move wrong, and suddenly you have very little experience in 0G. In fact, none. In fact, in 1939, with the exception of the professor, you are now the only 3 human beings who have actual experience in zero gravity.
Well, there was that farmer in Kansas.
Right. We don't talk about it.
No, we don't talk about it.
So you let go of the collective clump and spin out on your own towards the rafters and manage to grab one.
Okay.
One of the iron girders and wrap your fingers around it. And as try as you might, you cannot get yourself not to white knuckle these rafters, even though you're still pretty confident that whatever's happening is going to keep happening. There's still a part of your brain that says, yeah, but look down.
So I think what I'll do is I'll focus on that hay bale sized object to give me some sort of something to focus on and direct my energy towards. Because if I leave my mind to wander, it will wander into all sorts of bad places.
Yep. You will very easily remember where you are right at this moment. Ellie, you see him beginning to fiddle and open this case. And from your vantage point, you probably could get the other side of the case open and probably have the amount of time that you're going to be up here looking at this. Florence, you've managed to grab hold of one of the other of these spider web of girders that are up here and actually perch yourself on it. So even if whatever is happening wears off, you shouldn't plummet to your demise. You should just, promptly sit down on the girder that you're perched on and then wait for probably the fire department or something.
I'm clutched to it.
Yeah. Yeah. Either way, you see the professor is floating near you. He seems extremely confident in that he's kind of got his arms crossed and he's holding this device in his hand. And he's absolutely comfortable with the very slow rotation that he seems to be. So between Nikolas and Ellie's ministrations, you managed to get the cover off of this device. There are, aside from the various gears, wires, circuitry, you don't see a tank of that blue sparkly liquid, whatever was in it, but you do see whatever this device is has 5 unlit bulbs on the front.
Okay, so you got to figure whenever those devices go off, the charge comes in here, lights the bulbs, and then once it's all done, they pop their tops.
Absolutely, I agree.
I take a look at the wires that are here, just and get a good idea of their coloring, if they're multicolored at all, or are they just black?
Mostly they're black. Mostly they're covered in like a black plastic Bakelite connectors.
Interesting. Alrighty. Well,
one thing that Nikolas does not see due to his vantage point, but Elle does, is that on the inside of the case, it looks like there are notes that have been written with a wax pencil of some sort, and they are written in German.
I poke Nikolas in the shoulder.
ow.
Nikolas, you begin to very slowly spin away 90 degrees on your y-axis.
Hang on. I fumble for the railing and other things to hold on to.
Yep. You right yourself.
Not having a big breakfast was the smartest move I made.
Do you read German? There seems to be some notes on the inside of this.
A little, yeah. I list back over.
Managed to turn and pivot just a little bit so that you can see the writing inside the case, and it looks like there's hastily written engineering notes.
Ooh.
A lot of them are calculations that you don't understand because they are extremely advanced. Even to your eyes, these are extremely advanced. But the notes that you can make out in German, the bits you can make out are about charge capacity and about detonation.
I point to one of the words. This is the charge capacity, or what they believe it is. This, I point to another series of, another word, right? This is the detonation expectation. Some sort of expected blast.
What are the numbers?
The first number is 60%.
60%, point to it.
And the second one is, it looks to be roughly 20 miles. It's done in kilometers, so it takes you a moment to...
Yeah, I mumble out, well, this is kilometers, so I point to the writing. 32 kilometers is about 20 miles.
Egads.
20 miles would envelop the city.
That would be off. That would be a catastrophe of biblical proportions.
It would. It's another reason why we got to get out of here to the other buildings.
Yeah. As you find yourselves floating in the air like dandelion seeds on a slight breeze.
So this, reverse gravity effect is great. When does it wear off?
When I turn it off.
Oh.
I don't recommend doing it now.
Well, no, but...
You just push off.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's just going to be a little strange.
But how do we get down?
You just push off the top. This girder right here. See, watch this.
Pushes against it and heads down diagonally towards one of the rails.
I'm going to invert myself, obviously.
Okay.
And then I'm going to use the girders and sort of push and to swim down head first.
Okay.
Arms out.
Fantastic. I will say then, everyone who is attempting to push off and meet the railing below and land skillfully, I'm going to need a dexterity athletics roll.
As a note,
Fantastic.
Florence a lady does not invert herself. So Florence will instead, will push off with her hands.
And standing, so you just float down a light on the ground.
Just one.
Just one? Okay.
1.
1.
1 and 3. 3.
Wow.
Wow.
Maybe a gentleman shouldn't invert himself either.
Ellie, what did you roll?
Did we get what we needed to get done with that machine? Is it turned off or?
No, it's not turned off, but we've verified that it's here. And now we know, well, a couple of things. One, the blast radius and how it works.
Ellie got 1.
Nikolas, Professor, and Ellie all land relatively the same way. Like that first time parachute jumper, they kind of that land, roll, stand up, or bump into a wall. Florence, on the other hand, drifts down like the proverbial British nanny, alights with one foot on the rail, and then uses Nikolas's back and then the floor to step down as if they were naturally built steps gently onto the floor. Nikolas, you barely, because she's still mostly non-gravity heavy, you barely feel it. It's like being walked on by a toddler.
I let out a light oof.
Well, then, we should find these devices.
Closest one here is going to be the Hall of Art, which isn't too far.
All right, then.
I'll pick up the pace and hustle myself over to Masterpieces of Art.
All right, so you head over to Masterpieces of Art. Are the rest of you going with Nikolas, or are you deciding that the best way to go is to visit multiple X's?
It feels like time might be of the essence.
Yes. I think we should split up.
All right, well, so which way are you guys headed? You all have a chance to look at the map and kind of memorize where a specific X is.
Professor, down that way, I point back behind us. There's supposed to be one at Westinghouse. Given your mechanical aptitude, it might be a good place to look.
Capital idea. I'm thinking that we might want to go in the cardinal directions and then all rotate to the right so that we're not overstepping each other.
Okay. So then we send somebody to the parachute jump. Miss, I turn to Miranda's character. The parachute jump, you seem pretty agile on your feet. It's the longest run, but if we do that, we can continue to work back through this map and then maybe all meet at the Lagoon of Nations.
So I can go swiftly.
Very good.
All right, so everybody has picked an X on the map. Nikolas, you are heading towards the Masterpieces of Art.
I am.
Excellent. And Florence, you were headed to
The parachute jump.
over in the Great White Way. Okay. Noise. Professor, you were headed to
Westinghouse.
the Westinghouse. All right. And Ellie, you were headed to
I am going to American Art Today off of Rainbow
American
Avenue.
Art Today, the X right near you. Okay, fantastic. So, Ellie, you head across the fair. You weave your way through the crowd and past the buildings, the medicine and public health, past Gas Wonderland. There's a lot of gouts of fire that are done in bronze holders and such, as natural gas seems to be there. Celebrating gas. The next building over is American at Home, which you just poke through the windows to see some of the you'd call relatively ridiculous advancements that they have made. You're reminded of a movie reel animated short that you had seen about the House of Tomorrow. You take a right at a little fountain called Bowling Green. There's various restaurants there. You take a right and head to the east down Rainbow Avenue, aptly named because the flags and buildings here are very brightly painted. You get to the American Art Today building, which seems to be modern American art, folk art, if you will, what we would call folk art, history and culture-based art. Next to it, you get the distinct scent of barnyard.
Yeah, it kind of smells like, home.
You begin to pine for a younger day, back when you lived in the land of cheese in the great white north of Wisconsin.
I have a question. Before we parted ways, did the professor give us the know-how on how to disarm these devices or identify the devices?
No, he assumed you'd know.
Okay.
He knew.
We're gonna just.
And then he skedaddled because,
Yeah.
Westinghouse.
Chop, chop.
So you arrive at the American Art Today building and then realize that, yes, in fact, you are not 100% certain what you're looking for, or indeed, if you find it, what to do about it. You look around on Rainbow Avenue here, and you see that there are children laughing and running back and forth. There's a sign nearby that says the Town of Tomorrow. It seems to be something behind the American Art Today, maybe a small example town that had been built just for the fair, supposedly to show you the perfect town of the American tomorrow.
Well, I do remember what the device, well, at least what the device looked like broken, since Nikolas ripped the wires out of it. I'm not sure I would go that route if I come across the device. So I'm going to look for something similar.
Okay. You begin to scour the street area, and do you actually enter the American Art Today building or the Electrified Farm building, Schlitz, Palm Garden, any of those? Or are you scouring the street first?
Based on the X on the map that I had seen, it looked like it was more towards the corner of the American Art, like kind of met at the intersection of the American Art Today and the Electrified Farm. Unless it's going to be in the building, but based on the X on the map. So I'm going to look on the start, at least on the right-hand corner of the building, if I'm facing it, the American Art Today building, and kind of, look out there. If I don't see anything, I will head into the building.
Okay. You begin perusing the streets out here, looking around, poking, and you see a couple of garbage cans. You poke through them and don't really see anything. It's people walking about, enjoying cotton candy and laughing, children, giggling to themselves and such. There seems to be a lot of smiles and laughter here. Give me a cunning humanities roll, please.
I got one success.
One success. Okay.
Yes.
Standing out here in the street, and you're looking, and it's becoming increasingly frustrating over the next just minute or two, because you feel like this should be something that should be fairly easy to see or fairly easy to find. If people would just quiet and stop laughing for a few minutes, it would be fantastic. And it's at that moment that you realize that while you've been out here in the crowd all day, you've heard people laughing and talking and singing, all you're hearing from these people is laughter. Looking around, you also notice that none of the people seem to be conversing. Wherever they're standing or wherever they're leaning, they seem to be chuckling or laughing to themselves or to whoever they're near. And your blood starts to run a little cold as you realize that none of them seem to be looking at the same thing.
I reach my hand into my bag to just keep my hand on my revolver. So I'm starting to feel a little uneasy about the situation. Is there a spot that I can pinpoint where I see that people start laughing uncontrollably?
If you look around on the street, you do notice that looking back a bit, it seems to drift off the closer you get back towards Bowling Green. It seems the Bowling Green area, it seems to less and less people. But the closer you get here to the corner, the more and more people seem to be not walking or anything. They seem to be just kind of leaning and laughing to themselves, some of them almost in a dreamy-like state.
Is there anything on the building that looks like it's been displaced recently? Or anything hanging on the building?
There's signs and banners and such. A person goes by with a food cart. Kind of the wheels on it squeak as they walk by.
Yeah, I'm kind of at a loss as to where this device is. I mean, maybe it looks different than the device that Nikolas had in the Hall of Industry.
It could entirely, you realize it could distinctly look different. Give me an Enigma's intellect roll.
Okay. I got a 3.
3 successes?
Yes.
You're standing there looking at the street, now feeling extremely frustrated. So frustrated, in fact, that you actually kind of laugh to yourself. And then you stop and you realize that that's not funny. Why am I laughing to myself? In fact, that's actually kind of funny, too, that you would just spontaneously laugh like that. So you chuckle again, only it's a slightly louder chuckle. And then the third one comes out on its own. And you realize whatever's affecting these people is starting to affect you, too. And that there's only one person aside from you on the street that's currently moving.
Is it the food vendor?
You do see that the food vendor with that cart is the only one on the street that's still moving.
I go running over to them.
Okay. You turn to begin running over to them, and the world shifts a little, leaving trails. You are unsteady on your feet. One time, you were actually in Singapore, and you had one too many alcoholic beverages while you were talking to a mark. Unfortunately, when you went to stand up, it all went to your head at the same time. This feels very much like that. But you managed to retain your balance long enough to get over to this person pushing the food cart. When they hear you coming, they abandon the cart and start running on their own.
Oh, stop, come back here. I try to yell at them.
Give me a command roll. Command and presence.
I got 2.
Okay, fantastic. Yes, the person that you are yelling at stops in their tracks. They are dressed in a good humor man suit. White suit with the black bow tie, cap. You immediately notice that they have a large brand on the side of their neck. Looks like 2 letters. FL.
Do I know what that stands for?
Nothing that immediately springs to mind.
Okay.
But you also notice that in his hand, there is a handle of an atomizer or a bug spraying gun that would use to spray chemicals on bugs.
I pull my revolver on him.
You pull a revolver on him?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. He spins on one heel. Give me a dex aim roll.
Okay.
Dex and aim, all things firearms.
All things firearms. I have a 3.
3? Fantastic. In a gunslinger-like way, you pull your revolver at the same time he lifts this atomizing device, this gas-producing device, which has wisps of white vapor coming out of it that quickly dissipate into the air. You both go to pull the trigger at the same time. His weapon does not make a sound. Your weapon makes a very distinct pop. And it only takes one as he crumples backwards into a piece of the stone abutment that's housing some plants, some foliage. The look of shock and surprise on his face is he clearly did not expect to be shot in the chest by anyone. He presses his hands to the wound, like frantically trying to stop blood, but he still has this very almost dreamy look on his face in amongst the shock as his movements become less and less punctual and become slower and harder to, like he's having a hard time moving his limbs pretty quickly. You realize in short order that if you're going to ask him anything, you've only got a few seconds to do it. You are a very good shot.
I run over to him and I grab a scarf out of my handbag to press it against his chest where he's bleeding. While it won't help much, at least, it might stop. You might slow down his dying. And I lean over, where's the device? Where is the device?
His blood bubbles up from between his lips and runs down his chin. He looks like he's going to do everything in his power to not tell you where the device is. And he looks everywhere but at the cart.
Who do you work for?
I work for a great man. Dr. Vosper will destroy you.
More blood spatters your face as he coughs.
Ew. I wipe my face with the sleeve of my shirt. And I was grabbing his shirt with my hand, and I just kind of let go. And I get up and go over to the cart.
The sound of him chuckling weakly trails off as you walk back over to the cart.
I look back, is he still laying there?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah, you don't believe he has enough strength left in him to stand up or run away?
I'll keep an eye on him anyways, and if I need to shoot him again, I will shoot him again. Okay. But yes, I'm going to go investigate the cart and look for that device.
You go over to the cart. You very carefully open the top, and blue light emanates from the inside of the cart. Your face is illuminated from below by what you see. So, Professor, you scurry your professory legs which are not particularly used to all of this field work. Field work is for people who didn't go to school.
Right.
I have attended enough school that I should not be out here running. I should just be doing math. Grumble to yourself as you quickly scamper across the base of this campus, the base area of this campus. You approach the Westinghouse building, a large, curved, almost circular building. Built as you approach it, you almost feel like it's built like an air turbine, like for a blower motor. It's you go in one and then you circle a couple of times and then you come out at a higher level. It's built in a very mechanical way. But of course, this is Westinghouse. You expect that. You head through the door and up the ramp into the Westinghouse building, keeping your eyes peeled everywhere. You enter into this and it is a veritable cornucopia of fun, new electronic devices, or what you would refer to as electronic devices, technological devices, advancements in machinery, advancements in electricity. Most of them to you seem fairly primitive. I mean, this bodes quite well for mankind as a whole. They're finally going to be one step closer to where you have lived your entire life. But still, it's pretty far off.
It's amusing.
Exactly. It's amusing. And at the center of the room is a cluster of various, this one cleans and dries your clothes. It takes 15 minutes to do the whole thing. Ooh. Yeah. This one it looks like some sort of home generator device that you could have at home, powered perhaps by diesel or kerosene fuel that could be useful. That would perhaps generate power. But what really steals the show and what causes you to pause in your tracks is what's standing in the middle. And by standing, I mean there in the middle of the room, at 10.5 feet tall and surrounded by much smaller men, is a silver man whose chest is covered in various lights and dials and buttons. His head has wires and what look like antennas coming out of it. His hands are C-shaped clamps. His legs are segmented and they go to large rectangular platforms at the bottoms of his feet. Initially, it reminds you a little bit of a book that you had when you were younger, that something about a wizard and a man made of tin. You found the whole book to be nonsensical. It's farcical. You obviously could not travel via tornado and would be summarily killed the moment you went into it. But that part stuck out at you. And this reminds you of that. There's a sign in front of it that says Electro, the Mechanical Man. Brought to you by Westinghouse.
Fascinating.
Yes, there are men gathered around it as it pivots at the hip and reaches over and grabs something off of a table, something that's smoking, and puts it up to its mouth. It's a cigarette. That mechanical man is smoking a cigarette. And then it turns and looks at the crowd and waves its hand.
Good afternoon.
Well, it's crude. It could use some improvements, but it is fascinating.
It turns its head to look back and forth across the crowd. You're not sure if it's scripted or if it's responding to its environment. It might be responding to its environment. It does seem fairly advanced from what you've seen.
You know, if I was going to hide something, I think that'd be the place I'd hide it.
You think that perhaps somewhere inside that mechanical man?
Yes.
Are you going to be approaching through the Westinghouse crowd?
I will approach.
Okay. You approach Electro, the mechanical man. An amazing marvel of technology and form and function. It seems like he was pretty much a display piece. Nowhere near as impressive as the Pinehurst indicator, of course.
Right.
But as a display piece, it's really impressive. You get up to it, to the edge of the stage, and the plate on its chest does look like it has been opened or jimmied, as there is a scratched metal area next to one of the latches.
Well, how am I going to take care of this? Let's see.
Professor looks down to the device hanging on his belt that he used earlier to make people float. He picks it up and looks at the settings on it.
All right, I think I'm going to switch to setting 5.
All right, he turns some knobs and presses some buttons and puts it on setting 5. So what was the So the first ray that you used was known as an anti-gravity setting. What setting are you putting it on now, Professor?
The attractor beam.
An attractor beam. All right, which will allow you to attract and direct the movements of a physical object?
Yes.
Okay. So after a moment, the device you're holding powers up, and you fire it at Electra,
Yes.
I assume? Okay.
Specifically the plate on the front.
Plate on the front. The people in the hall hear a shuddering and a mechanical wrenching sound, or a metal wrenching sound, as the plate snaps off of the front of Electro and collides with the ground. Skitters towards you and come to a stop near your feet. Inside of the chest of Electro, the mechanical man, where its heart would be, is a device about the size of a thermos, a full-size, say, soup thermos, one of the old-fashioned green ones, that is swirling and glowing blue, and it seems as though it has been wired directly into the chest of this creature. And I say creature because once the panel comes off, you see its head slowly turn towards you. Crude as it may be, you now realize that this 10-foot-tall mechanical man is looking directly at you.
Oh, now this is interesting.
So what's your response as it steps down off the pedestal with one heavy metal foot? Clank!
I am going to change settings.
You frantically begin twisting knobs and hitting buttons on the side of the ray gun. Which setting are you putting it on?
8.
Setting 8. All right, you go through the mental catalog of the various things that you remember putting into this, and you remember one setting, a setting that, well, it was one that you created after that incident with the 6 assistants that you had during the one experiment. They became one large glob. You had to come up with a ray that would separate them, and you came up with what was referred to as the cleave ray. It measures the mass and then neatly separates that mass into 2 equal portions. So do you fire the cleave ray? Okay. How much charge does the cleave ray use out of your gun?
It's 10.
10? Okay, so that, and the anti-gravity ray?
10 per square foot of matter.
Just square foot of matter. How many rough square feet of matter would you say the 4 of you comprised put together? Call it 24 points.
Okay.
So we'll call it 24 points. So you now have spent 35 out of the cell, the cell in your battery. Okay. So with a high-pitched crack sound that it starts off the sound of the capacitor charging up and ends with what sounds like lightning, Electro shudders and stops moving. And there's a line that goes up his middle, neatly up the middle, separating nose, eyes. The smoke from the cigarette in his left claw emanates from the line that's between the 2 halves as they slide apart, the edges glowing orange and then finally going back to metal color, as the 2 halves fall apart with the sound of, say, someone cutting a Buick in half and dropping it off of an overpass as they fall separately into halves. However, the device in its chest now begins to fall pretty much directly straight out and onto the floor. So you will need to make a Dex athletics roll, or if you have the time, you can make a Dex technology roll to reset your gun and attempt to catch it with a previous ray.
I'm going to try the Dex plus technology.
Dex plus technology. Okay.
And that is 1.
1 success? Okay. You frantically hit the previous button on the ray, which goes back to the setting before the one that you're currently using. It was the attractor beam. Okay, so it wasn't anti-gravity ray, it was the attractor beam that you used before the cleave ray. Thank you. And the attractor beam, you managed to catch this glowing device, but not before it has a chance to bounce briefly off of the floor. One faint tink as it bounces off the floor and into your hand. Unfortunately, when it gets to your hand, you hear it as you look down, and the glass that's holding the fluid is starting to crack slowly.
Well, that's not good at all.
No. You figure if it goes off in here, minimum you and everyone in this building will be, well, let's just put a big fleshy question mark on your fate. So real quick, what do? You only have a moment.
Looks like I'm going to use the absorbing ray.
Absorbing ray? You're
Yeah.
going to absorb the device? Okay. Makes it you. How much power does it cost?
That's 25.
It costs you 25. Okay. And what was the effects of it?
Makes the objects disappear entirely.
Okay, so this is setting 1, I believe.
Yes.
This is a setting on the gun that you have rarely used because you used it one time and it caused a minor catastrophe in the lab.
Yeah.
You just spin the dial all the way back to setting 1 and you toss the canister above you and pull the trigger. The canister and the air around it makes a rushing pop sound as it all vanishes, you believe, to another dimension that is at 87 degrees angle to our own.
I believe.
You believe. Both vanish. The air rushes towards the area where it was previously just empty because nature abhors a vacuum, and your ears all pop. But the device vanishes, and Electro is standing in a smoldering pile of ruin. The hall is silent as 500 or 600 businessmen, scientists, business moguls, and engineers are all staring at you, mouths agape, trying to figure out what the hell you just did to one of the prize exhibits of the World's Fair.
Don't worry, I saved all your lives.
And then do you run out of the room?
Yes.
Okay. As you run out of the room, Miss Fletcher, you were heading towards the parachute drop, I believe?
Yes.
All right. So you ended up with one of the longest walks across the park.
Florence Fletcher is a great speed walker, though.
Absolutely. She created speed walking back in the 30s just so that later generations could have access to such an amazing technology.
A lady does not run.
A lady does not run, but a lady does sometimes need to get somewhere quickly. So you aggressively stroll across the fair, repassing the Perisphere and the Trilon and the crowds. And you, in short order, after about probably about a 10-minute walk, arrive at the parachute jump. You have to cross over a couple Avenue of Labor, the Commerce Circle, and when you cross the Empire State Bridge, a small bridge that actually does pass over World's Fair Boulevard, a road built specifically for the World's Fair, you end up in another area of the fair altogether. It feels as though the whole attitude of the fair changes when you cross this bridge. It goes from a stoic, almost museum-like atmosphere to a carnival. When you're in this side, it feels like a carnival. The business, the halls and the exhibits here are not, they're called zones. They're not called halls. And there's more concession and more rides. You see a lot more of a younger crowd here. Young men and women in more of a casual attire, more of a fun recreational attire, and you see quite a few young men in military uniforms walking about with women and girls on their arms, arm in arm, laughing and joking, winning things, balloons, popping balloons to win for their significant others and such. So there's a lot more squealing and high-pitched laughter, the smell of fried bread and cotton candy, a lot more prevalent over here. And looking at the signs, you see signs pointing off with arrows further into what they call the Great White Way, which is the amusement area, that say dancers pointing off in that direction. You see women out in the street wearing body-colored stockings, like body-colored body stockings, and then very scant clothing and are dancing. You also notice there are police here walking on like beat cops, but there were not beat cops over in the other part of the fair, just security. They definitely seem to be pretty heavy on the road where the dancers are. So you pass that area up. You have a specific place and time you have to go to, and as you've learned, place and time is everything. So you arrive in one of the amusement areas at the base of the parachute jump. There's the Hall of Miracles not too far away, and a few sideshow areas. There's also Buck's Jungle Land off to the north. You hear the squeals of people on the ride of the parachute jump. This is a large tower in which you sit down and they strap a small canvas belt strap over your lap. You are hoisted several stories into the air, and then the seat that you are in is dropped, held only aloft by a parachute and a rope. The parachute opens time after time, slowing your descent to the ground. It's one of the early thrill rides, kind of like, the death drops that they have in amusement parks now. Only a lot more likely to actually kill you. time and again, as you approach, you hear the sound of loud squealing and laughter as people are dropped, quote unquote, to their doom. What are you doing, Miss Fletcher?
Well, I would at first stand beside the parachute jump, stand kind of in the area of people watching, give it a good visual inspection. And if nothing turns up, then the best way to inspect a ride is on it.
Okay. All right. So, you take a moment or two to inspect the area, take a look around. Give me a cunning enigmas roll. We'll go with cunning and enigmas. We'll call it enigmas for anything that is out of place or puzzling you currently, and cunning because, well, you are.
I had a 10 again and a 10 again, so I re-rolled those but didn't get more successes, so I just have 2.
So two meaty successes. Mm-hmm. Okay, awesome. So you don't see anything particularly out of the ordinary. You trace the cables that you can see through the various local buildings and up the side of the ride. You do see that there are quite a few cables that go up the side of the ride, but there are lights on top. So you're not sure if those are just to activate the lights on top or if they are put there for nefarious purposes.
If I only had that floaty gun again, though there's no ceiling here, so that could be dangerous.
Yeah, you have a brief moment, a momentary vision of yourself floating off into the sky with nothing to grab onto, and you have to suppress a shudder.
Yeah. Is there a means for me to climb up this thing, to follow? I want to follow these wires if I can.
There is a ladder on one side of it. It's built like a triangle, like a triangular tower, triangular-shaped tower. And in one of the points of the triangle, there is a ladder that goes up.
I want to sneak past whoever's running the ride then and climb up this tower, follow these wires.
Okay. All right. Give me a dex, we'll indicate death athletics, because it will be a good combination of sneaking and climbing.
Gotcha. So athletics and...
We'll call it dex.
Dex, okay. Hey, I've been there before. Larceny, and... So that is 2 successes for me.
For a moment or two of waiting for groups to get off of the ride and to get back on the ride, you see that there's a rhythm to it, like the ride is breathing in and out people. And you realize that the best time to climb would be as the people are leaving, and the person who, the carnival ride operator, I should say 5'5", very thick individual. He's very heavily set, not fat, just very heavy, almost as wide as he is tall, and with forearms that look like steel cables. He is removing people, and you manage to sneak past him as he's patting a young boy on the head. And you have a very good day. The boy giggles as he runs off. You grab the ladder and begin to climb as you think to yourself, it's very odd that he would have it's not a tattoo. What is that, a brand on his neck? Odd. As you climb.
Strange.
It looked like an O2 or an OS. Mm. He seemed like a nice enough guy, patting kids on the head and, gives a little cute little girl a balloon as they run off.
Perhaps a reformed criminal then.
Could be. He does have tattoos. So obviously a criminal of some sort. You begin to climb, and you get halfway up this tower and realize that you are in fact climbing an extremely tall metal tower that was built solely for this fair, and that it has been a long time since you've climbed anything that was outside that was more than half a story tall, since maybe you were 12 and you climbed trees.
Luckily, a lady does not look down.
No, lady does not look down, although anyone looking up at you may in fact give that ladyship a run for its money, because I imagine you are probably not wearing pants.
No.
Neither are you, Morgan. Regardless of the year and what your character would like to be wearing, it is not pants.
Yes, I know.
After 6 minutes of climbing, you get to the top of this tower. The breeze blows by you at a rather brisk clip as the tower is swaying in the breeze beneath you. You look down, and there is a group of the carts with people in them coming up the side of the tower slowly. You hear the machinery as they are hoisted into the air. The rope next to you is drawn taut and makes that twisting sound as the car is being hoisted up. Right above the motor is a device, again, about the size of a thermos, maybe a little larger. Cables that run out of the wire in the circuit and into this device. You could pretty easily reach it. You realize that you probably only have a couple of moments before those carts of people get up here and can easily see you, as either of them have to do is look over and notice that there's a woman clinging to a ladder at the top of the ride.
Pish posh. They can notice as they will. It's a closed thing, right? That I could like pop open.
Yeah. Mm-hmm,
yeah, that would pop it.
Okay. Yeah, it takes just a moment. There's a metal latch that shrieks in dismay as you force it open. And inside, you can now reach your hand into this metal enclosure that's mostly plates and screen. And you can now see the bundles of electrical cables going into the hoisting motor to get the riders up into the sky, and then the device that is also plugged into it.
Do I feel like it's safe for me to be able to just to remove? I want to try to remember what Nikolas did with the wires, with that previous device, and I want to see if I can somehow deduce how these wires work, and if I can disconnect the correct one without inadvertently harming a motor or anything like that.
Okay. I will need you to make me a resolve technology roll.
Okay.
You are having to plumb the depths of your brain for things that you did not think you were going to have to remember.
Now, so you said resolve technology. Follow-up question about the rules.
Yes.
If I wanted to use plot twist for this, how would that work? Would it work for this?
That is one of your gifts, right?
Yes. It's on page 213.
You can add the dot you have in reflective as an enhancement to your roll, because you twist, you actually, wait a minute, I get this. So the enhancement, for those of you listening along at home, you will hear the term enhancements thrown around. An enhancement is an automatic success based on a gift, talent, or ability that you can use for a relevant situation. In this case, plot twist, the situation allows for a hidden amount of knowledge to make this puzzle easier for Florence to figure out. It plays out in the story in that she watched Nikolas disarm the grenade device earlier, and it seemed pretty easy. I mean, yeah, he made it look casual, but breaking it down, you remember roughly the colors that he pulled out. And I mean, it's only 2 colors that you had to watch him do. And you pull out those same 2 colors, strip them, and twist the wires together. Go ahead and make that roll.
Okay, so I have an 8, and that's 1 success.
1 success? Okay. Takes you a moment, and there's a shower of sparks as you accidentally bump one of the wires up against the frame of the parachute drop briefly. You don't lose your balance, but you do have to blink for a few moments to get those purple spots out of your eyes. And then you finally get the wires twisted together, and you hear a much larger version of that powering down sound that you heard when Nikolas was handling the device in the Hall of Industry earlier. In fact, it's loud enough that it gives you an impression of how much power this thing was actually holding.
Yeah.
At that moment, you look over to your left, and the parachute drop cars reach the top. And there's a thin gentleman with a buzz cut in a green, sharp-pressed military suit sitting next to a small girl, pale complexion in a floral print dress. And they both look over to you, and he gets a very confused look on his face and says, "Hey, wait a minute," as they drop back down. The yell seems to attract the attention of the guy operating the ride, who yells something below, fishes into his coat pocket for something, and begins to climb up the ladder. And I think with almost everyone set at a cliffhanger, Nikolas, we will get to you at the beginning of next episode. We're going to pull it there. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us. I hope you guys have enjoyed listening to this so far as much as I am enjoying running it and putting the people through their golden age paces. I want to thank you guys I would like to thank you, and I would like to thank Onyx Path for producing and publishing the Trinity Continuum books, which are fantastic, easily available on DriveThruRPG. It is a fun system, a lot of fun to play, and honestly, it's super easy to pick up, folks. So do yourself the favor, pick it up. Pick up any of the new. You got Aberrant, which you may or may not come up soon, as well as Aeon, which is fantastic. Stick with us, as this roller coaster will take you some amazing places coming up soon. Thank you, and good night.